I don't know how because it feels like it was Christmas yesterday, but it is the end of January. When you listen to this, it will be the very start of February. And I know that at this time of year, it's very common for you to have gone into a new year with the best intentions, all guns blazing, motivation really high. And it is often the case that by the time you get to the end of January or through February, March, you might feel a bit of a dip in motivation. You might feel like your efforts have started to drop off a little bit. And in today's podcast, I want to talk about some of the most common reasons why this happens, why you feel like you might be falling off the wagon a little bit, why you haven't been able to keep up your efforts, because it's often not just a case of willpower, it's so much more than that. And the process of goal setting comes into this, which is something I've spoken about on the podcast before. And I've actually got a goal setting webinar that I'm currently working on. It might even be out by the time this podcast is released. Goal setting and the way that we go about goal setting is really important if we want to be able to keep up our efforts. So that's an aspect of it. But there are also a lot of different contributing factors which come down to the process we take, the support we've got, the mindset that we have that will play into our ability to sustain our efforts and therefore achieve long-term success. So I'm going to talk through some of those things today and hopefully give you some food for thought for why you might not have been able to sustain your efforts if that has been the case, even if you went into the new year super motivated, and how you might course correct to increase your probability of long-term success. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is very much goal setting related. Often, if we don't give our goals enough meaning, or the goals that we set on really in line with what matters to us in life, that can stop us from achieving long-term success and it can stop us from being able to be consistent with our efforts. So, when it comes to setting goals in the first place and setting intentions, it's really important to kind of deep why we want to achieve a certain goal and not just be like, oh, maybe you want to run a half marathon, but then not think about how that's going to change your life for the better. If you wanted to set that goal of running a half marathon, it's important to think about the why behind that and not just why you want to achieve the long-term goal of running the half marathon, but how the process is going to change your life for the better. So if we break that down, if you're training for a half marathon, you're going to be running consistently and showing up for yourself consistently. And you're also going to have to pay attention to your nutrition to support your performance and recovery and your overall health alongside that. So, what it's worth thinking about is how are those actions going to change your life and the way that you feel, perform, and function on a regular basis for the better? If we do this and we think about how that process is going to change our life for the better, it gives us a greater drive to be able to continue to show up for ourselves when we don't want to, when things get hard, because it's easy to show up for yourself when motivation is high, when you initially set a goal. But whatever goals you set, whoever you are, there are going to be obstacles that show up, and there are going to be days where you don't want to do what you need to do to achieve the goal that you have set. And you need to prepare yourself for that and give your goals real meaning and give the process real meaning so that on those days where you don't want to show up for yourself, you still do. And therefore, you will be so much more likely to achieve the end goal because it really means something to you. And because you realize actually, it's not even if you didn't run the half marathon, the action that you're taking on a daily and a weekly basis to get there is going to enhance your life. And so you're more likely to therefore change your life for the better by giving your goals and the process that is going to be necessary to achieve them so much more meaning. Try and think about, how your life would be different if you were to feel confident in your own skin, if you were to feel at peace around food, if you were to get really fit and strong. How would that change your life? How would it make you a better person? What would achieving your goals allow you to do and experience? Would it open up more opportunities for you by making you more likely to put yourself out there? And actually, it's worth thinking about what is not achieving them holding you back from. So, is that holding you back from certain experiences, being able to show up as your best self? Is it holding you back from feeling confident going into interviews? Is it making you feel weak and fragile? Is it meaning that you don't show up for social occasions because your relationship with food or your body image is in a poor place and needs work? Think about these things because, again, it will give you a greater reason to show up for yourself. And it's even worth writing a little note for yourself on your phone, a message to yourself for the times where things get difficult or motivation is low and you just don't want to show up for yourself, to remind yourself of your why so that you can push through those hard times and still show up for yourself regardless of how you feel. So that is point one. Deep it. Give your goals meaning. Give the process meaning. Make it matter. And set goals that are in line with your values, what really matters to you in life, and not just, surface level goals based on what other people are doing or what's popular on social media, for example. The second point, a really common mindset in the fitness world that is holding so many people back is having this kind of on plan, off plan, all or nothing mindset. This mindset leads you to feeling like a failure when life inevitably happens and you behave imperfectly, which we all do because we are human. We are not robots. We are all going to have occasions where we slip up, where things don't go to plan, where we're not able to hit all of our targets. And when we have this all or nothing, on plan, off plan mentality, what happens is when these occasions come up and we don't behave the way that we wanted to behave, we view ourselves as a failure. We internalize that. And we're therefore so much more likely to sack our goals off completely because we don't believe we're capable. We class ourselves as a failure, or we almost think, what's the point if things don't go to plan? Because in our heads, if we have this all or nothing mindset, we're either perfect and we're 100% on plan, or there's no point. And if you have this mindset, you're so much more likely to do things like skip a session entirely if you don't have as much time to train as you might have liked to in an ideal world. You're more likely to overeat when you consumed something that you weren't planning on having, or a food that you were maybe trying to cut out or avoid because you're in that extreme kind of mindset. Or say you were out for the day and you weren't able to eat your usual meals at your usual time, again, you're more likely to think, F it, I'll just completely sack off my health and fitness goals today. Whereas if you have the mindset of being able to be flexible and sit in the middle ground and recognize that we are all imperfect at times, you're so much more likely to still show up for yourself when you don't have as much time to train, to just get 20 minutes or half an hour in, because that work still counts and that act of showing up for yourself still has a huge impact on how you feel throughout the rest of the day, how you carry yourself, how you behave, and therefore your ability to achieve success. And when you're able to sit in the middle ground rather than having this all or nothing mindset, you're more likely to do what you can given your circumstances, as opposed to throwing it away, throwing all of your efforts away when you can't engage in one specific behavior that you wanted to engage in. And with food, you're more likely to, say you were to go for a meal out and you didn't have access to your usual foods, or you weren't able to track your food. If you are someone who tracks your food, if you don't have this all or nothing mindset, you're more likely to still make conscious decisions in line with your goals and values. You're more likely to give yourself permission to leave food on your plate if you get to the point of feeling satisfied rather than over consuming. And you're more likely to engage in behaviors that are in line with your goals and values, even when you're not able to be perfect. Another example is you're more likely to still make an effort to be active, even if you know you're not going to hit a certain number of steps, or if you haven't got access to your step tracker. So, can you see through me talking through these examples how being able to be flexible with your approach, being able to sit in the middle ground rather than having this all or nothing mindset is not weak. It is actually, it's a trait, it's a mindset that those who are more likely to achieve long-term success adopt. It is something which is going to contribute to your success, not take away from it. So it's so important to ditch the perfectionist mindset, challenge those perfectionist tendencies, and learn how to sit in the middle ground and be flexible with your approach. The next point, the next reason why a lot of people get to this time of year and feel like they just can't keep their efforts up is that they've been trying to follow generic programs or copy what the people are doing on social media rather than following an approach which is specific to them as an individual. Generic programs don't usually take into account your current strength and fitness levels or your life circumstances, your availability, your accessibility. So you're setting yourself up to fail from day one when the approach isn't tailored to you. You might see progress in a short period of time when you're riding a motivational high if you're trying to follow an approach that isn't right for you and the expectations are too high. Say you've set yourself the goal of training every single day and that's unrealistic for you to stick with over the long term. You might see progress short term, but over the long term, you're likely to crash and burn in one way or another, or get to a point where you're just unable to sustain your efforts given your life circumstances, because we are all different and we all need different programming in line with that and in line with our life circumstances, our priorities, our commitments. So these generic approaches often they aren't what we need over the long term. They might get us somewhere short term, but an individualized approach is always going to be generic programs. So take the individualized approach where possible. The same applies for following workouts from ChatGPT even, or I'd argue ChatGPT maybe is slightly better because there's an element of personalization, but ChatGPT gets a lot of things wrong. And that's actually, funnily enough, recently I saw a reel going around on Instagram where people were asking ChatGPT how many R's are in the word strawberry, and it gets the answer wrong, which is a straight fact, and it's quite an easy fact most people know. And ChatGPT gets that fact wrong. So that is obviously not really relevant to health and fitness. However, it's an example of how ChatGPT does get things wrong. Whereas a lot of people, I think, rely on it as this factual source of information, which it is just simply not. And alongside that, it is going to give you generic information. It doesn't know your full story. It doesn't know you as well as a coach would. And it's not going to be able to adapt things over time in the way that you need, in the way that a coach would either. And so it's really important to recognize that when you're using tools like ChatGPT, is that it's a guideline framework, but It's not the best at programming, and it's not going to be truly specific to you as an individual, and you're not going to get the same guidance that you would from working with a coach who has the experience of working with clients one to one for years and years and is truly going to give you time, attention, support, connection with a real human being. That is honestly in itself a game changer. And going back to social media, following what other people are doing on social media, say someone has put their training out there, they've put a program out there. Again, that program might work for them, but we are all so different in terms of our genetics, our availability, our accessibility, our stress levels, our tolerance for training volume, our tolerance for intensity, our training age. The list is endless. And that is why following other people's programs off of social media is never going to work for you as well as following an individualized approach would. You also don't get when you're following generic programs on social media or using ChatGPT, you don't get feedback on your form and execution in the gym, which is an absolute game changer. Because say there's a move, say a Romanian deadlift, for example, if you're not performing that movement properly, you're going to be one, increasing your injury risk, but two, there is so much more potential progress and growth that you could get from that movement if you execute it properly. And a coach will give you feedback on your form and execution to make sure that you are nailing that movement and therefore getting the most out of your efforts in the gym. ChatGPT isn't going to do that. You can't also do that if you're just following someone else's program on off of TikTok or Instagram. Yes, you can look at their form and execution, you can watch form videos, but it's never the same as someone giving you specific feedback on your form and execution. And often, when you take training videos, you will watch them back and realize you're doing things that you didn't even realize you were doing in the moment. So that's the power of training videos. And we as coaches can analyze these videos so well because of the experience we have doing so and so objectively that it will really take your training to a whole new level and you'll get so much more out of it, not just short term, but over the long term as well. It's an absolute game changer. Imagine every single exercise you're doing in the gym becomes 10 times more effective. You're actually targeting the muscle groups that you're trying to target. Your growth, your progress as a result of that is going to skyrocket. So that's another point. The next thing that often holds a lot of people back and stops them from achieving their goals is that they need to work on the relationship with themselves because it's all well and good setting goals, but if you don't believe in your ability to achieve a goal or you don't think you're worthy of it, your sense of self-worth isn't very good, you're going to have a really hard time getting there. And that is why I, as a coach, take a really holistic approach and do mindset work and do work on my clients' health, as well as just giving them their training programming and their nutrition targets. They need that mindset work to be able to actually achieve the goals that they set. It's all well and good having numerical targets, but if you don't have the self-belief, you'll never get there. Working to change because you believe in your ability to succeed and you want more for yourself and more from your life looks so different from working to change from a place of scarcity or a place of lack and disbelief and hate or shame. And you can guess which one results in more long-term success. Because tying that in again to the all or nothing point as well, when you believe in your ability to succeed and you work to change because you believe in yourself and because you want more for your life and more for yourself, you're so much more likely to treat yourself with compassion when you encounter hurdles or obstacles in your journey. And as a result of that, you're so much more likely to get back up and show up for yourself off the back of that, whatever the hurdle or obstacle was, as opposed to feeling defeated. Whereas if you have very low self-worth and you're working to change and don't really believe you're worthy of that, you're so much more likely to encounter self-sabotaging behaviors, and you're so much more likely to let obstacles or hurdles really knock you off track, and you're less likely to be able to just get back up and carry on as normal off the back of encountering those hurdles or obstacles. So it's really important to take those things into account. Your mindset behind, setting certain goals and your mindset throughout the process of working to achieve them. The next point is you're not so likely to achieve any health and fitness goals, whether they be body composition related, whether they be performance related, or whatever over the long term, if you have work to do on your relationship with food or your body image. Now, I'll caveat this by saying that you can do both at the same time. You can work on achieving performance goals and also work on your body image or relationship with food at the same time. You can also, in some circumstances, work on, you might see some fat loss, for example, as a result of engaging in healthy behaviors whilst working on your body image and relationship with food. So it is possible to do both in some circumstances. There are other circumstances where you'll have to focus on one at a time. But if you struggle, the point is that if you struggle with your body image or your relationship with food, at some point in your journey, it is going to interfere with any performance or body composition goals you have anyway. So it's really important to make sure that you do the work on your relationship with food and or body image if you do have struggles in those areas, because you will be so much more likely to succeed with any goals you set over the long term as a result of that. And an example of this is, say you struggle with your relationship with food, you struggle with overeating and comfort eating, but you want to lose fat. If you were to go into a fat loss phase without working on your relationship with food, without addressing the root cause, without really truly tackling the comfort eating and the overeating, you could see progress with fat loss, yes, over the short term. But you will eventually likely get to a point where that issue comes back up again, whether it's due to a horrible life event that triggers you to engage in that overeating and comfort eating again, or whether it be due to just a really high stress period or a long period of time trying to be too rigid in food, so that then you get to a point where you can't sustain it anymore and those issues come back but worse. In some way or another, the relationship with food or body image issues you had at the start will rear their head if you don't work on them, and they will hinder your progress with the other health and fitness goals that you have. And so that's why it's so important to do the work on your relationship with food or body image if it is to be done for you, because not only will that enhance your life on its own and improve your physical and mental health if you work on your body image and relationship with food, like that in itself is such a rewarding process that will have a huge impact on your quality of life. But beyond that is it will improve your ability to achieve any other goals in the realms of health and fitness, and also in generally your work and personal life that you may have. So that's something to take into account. The final really common reason why people get to this point in the year and they're unable to sustain their efforts is that they're trying to work at a 10 out of 10 intensity every day, which is impossible for anyone to sustain. Whether that be in your gym-based training sessions, within your business, with nutrition, trying to go all out every single day is a surefire way to burn out, get ill or injured, or just get to a point where you're sick of the process because there's no room for anything else. Plus, low intensity effort comes with benefits that high intensity effort or work isn't able to facilitate, and vice versa. Using training as an example, we say running as a really good example of this. If you go all out every single run trying to hit a PB, you're never going to build your aerobic base, which is essential if you wish to succeed with increasing your distances over time, getting really fit over time, you have to do the low intensity aerobic work in order to build that aerobic base and get really good at running for longer and being able to sustain your efforts over an extended period of time. So that is one aspect of it. Two, you're so much more likely to get injured if you go all out every single session trying to hit a PB. Because when we work at higher intensities, injury risk is automatically a lot higher, especially when you're new to a skill such as running and you need to do it at lower intensities in order to progress with the skill element of that thing that you're trying to succeed with. And your body needs to learn to adapt to that. And it's going to have a really hard time doing that if you're constantly working at a really high intensity. Running in itself puts a lot of force through our joints, tendons, and ligaments, and so the injury risk is quite high anyway. Never mind if we're going all out every single session and not doing that lower intensity work. That lower intensity work also allows us to train more frequently. And the same could be said for business. If you were constantly doing really high intensity, draining, high energy, high effort work, you're going to get to a point where you can't sustain that. You're going to get ill. You're going to get burnt out. You're going to get to a point where you're just like, I can't do this anymore, or your creativity dies. Whereas if you do a mixture of lower intensity, low stress work, and you also do the high energy, high effort work, you're going to be able to get more work done with that mixture because you can recover from that. You can sustain that. The same is said for training. If you do a mixture of lower intensity and higher intensity work, guess what? You're going to be able to do more training. You're going to be able to perform better over the long term because you're not going to get ill, you're not going to get injured, you're going to be able to sustain your efforts. You've got those mixture of different adaptations as well. And you save the highest intensity efforts for the sessions which are specifically for that, or the days of work that are specifically for that. You train smart, not just hard. That is how you're going to achieve long-term success. We want to work hard, yes, but we also want to apply logic to that. We don't just want to work hard for the sake of it and get to a point where we're unable to sustain our efforts. So hopefully that helps put that into perspective. Because I know it's really hard to wrap your head around when you're going through a process yourself that you really care about and you're trying to achieve goals yourself that you really care about. Of course, you're going to want to put a lot of effort in, but it's so important to just check yourself, take a pause and be like, okay, cool, I want to work hard with this, but how can I make sure that I can sustain a high level of effort over time? And that's by not just working at and it sounds backwards, but it's by not just working at like a ridiculously high level every single day. There are going to be days where you have to work at that lower intensity. There might be boundaries you have to put in place, like switching off at a certain time or having a rest day each week to enable you to sustain the high efforts when they are appropriate. So let me know if that helps. I really hope that this podcast helps you realign and maybe redirect your attention a little bit in order for you to increase your probability of long-term success when it comes to achieving your goals. If you found that you've got to this time of the year and they're sort of like waning a little bit and your efforts are starting to dip, your motivation's dipping, I really hope this podcast gives you some answers as to why that might be and helps you refocus, change what needs to be changed so that you can achieve the goals that are meaningful to you and you can give yourself more meaning so that you're more likely to show up for yourself moving forwards. But if you need any support with this, please don't hesitate to reach out. And if there are any questions you have, or if you have any feedback or thoughts on this podcast, please drop me a DM on Instagram. My Instagram is Danni Bosworth. That's DANNI BOSWORTH. I love hearing from you guys. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today. It genuinely means the world. And I will see you next week.